Hey guys, tonight we're slipping back into the cold spray of the North Sea, where your boots are never dry, your beard is often frozen, and your day revolves around fish, frost, and the faint smell of eel slime. That's right, we're living a full day in the sea-chilled, wind-blasted, salt-streaked life of a Viking fisherman. You'll wake before the sun, if you can even call it waking, after a night spent tossing on straw-stuffed bedding with a smoke-hole chimney and a snoring cousin 3 feet away. Your bones ache, your knees already feel damp, and the moment you move to sit up, your toes remind you they've been living in soggy wool socks for weeks. Welcome to your life. You step outside your longhouse into the half-light of dawn. The thatched roof above you drips with melted frost. The fjord ahead lies still, a mirror of slate and steel. A mist snakes across the water, and the sky is the color of old pewter. Today, the sea smells like cold iron and herring burps. Your fingers fumble with rough flaxen netting as you begin the daily ritual of prepping your gear. Each knot, each weighted stone, each worn scrap of twine carries the memory of 1,000 casts, and 1,000 fish you wish were slightly bigger. Inside the home, your mother tosses a handful of barley into boiling water and calls it breakfast. You're still chewing last night's dried trout between your molars. There's no escape. The salt has seeped into your very soul. You wrap a wool tunic around your shoulders and fumble for the coarse leather cords that serve as makeshift shoelaces. The knots fight back, frozen stiff. You tie them anyway. You know you'll be readying them again in an hour when the water soaks through. It's all part of the charm. Or curse. Your fishing partners arrive. Your cousin Eggle, who always smells vaguely of seal oil and rarely blinks, and Roar, a man of few words but many sneezes. Together, the three of you look like a walking advertisement for untreated rheumatism. You shoulder the nets, sling a gutting knife at your hip, and march toward the dock. If you can call a few lashed logs a dock. The wood is slimy. A gull screams overhead like it knows something you don't. You choose to ignore it. Historians still argue whether the average Viking fisherman actually lived full-time by the sea or traveled inland to trade. What they don't argue about, the sheer toughness of the men and women who made their living in these waters. Your muscles burn just from hauling the boat a few feet off the rocks. You check your sail. It's been patched with a scrap of your wife's old apron. Not ideal, but hey, it's waterproof. You mutter a half-prayer to Njord, god of the sea, and to Ran, goddess of shipwrecks. It's a confusing mix. Viking deities are like that, equal parts helpful and spiteful, depending on how much mead you left them last solstice. Fun tidbit. Some Viking fishermen believed that wrapping a chicken feather into their belt would bring good luck on the water. You don't have a chicken. You do, however, have a seagull feather jammed behind your ear. Close enough. As you push off, your boots slip on a smear of fish slime, and you nearly land face first into the fjord. Eggle snickers. You promise to replace his cod with turnips at dinner. The early morning fog is thick enough to chew. Everything is gray, except your boat's weathered prow. Carved with a toothy wolf, you whittled one summer when the herring vanished and you had too much time on your hands. It growls silently at the sea, as if daring it to fight. You sit on the edge of the boat, squinting into the mist. Somewhere out there lies today's catch. If you're lucky, it's haddock. If you're really lucky, it's enough to trade for ale. If not, well, maybe someone in the village likes turnips. Behind you, the longhouse chimney gives one last puff of smoke, like a farewell from the land before the sea takes over your world for the next 16 hours. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop your location and local time in the comments, just for fun. Let's see who's listening from the warmest climate. I'll live vicariously through you. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your arms ache already, but you keep moving. Nets bundled under one arm, knife tucked into your belt. You're not just a fisherman. You're a Norse survivor with a spectacular appreciation for fish guts and a questionable definition of leisure. And the day has only just begun. The gruel sits like wet gravel in your gut, which, to be honest, is a step up from last week's boiled eel pudding. You lick the last of the salt from your fingers. Not out of appetite, but out of habit. You don't waste flavor when your life is 90% salted fish. The Nar bobs impatiently against the dock. She's no sleek warship, no dragon-prowed longboat slicing across waves, but she's sturdy, wide-bellied, and built for hauling, not showing off. Her planks creak like an old woman's knees, and there's a tar-stained intimacy to her curves. You've patched her hull with so many odd bits, antler here, driftwood there, that she's starting to resemble a collaborative art project. You grunt as you toss your nets aboard, the coarse hemp scratching your already raw palms. Each knot in the weave tells its own story. Some neat, some suspiciously sticky, one mysteriously charred. You're pretty sure Roar tried to warm his feet over a fish net last winter. He still insists it was sabotage. Eggle hops in beside you and immediately starts untangling yesterday's mess of herring scales and seaweed. He hums something tuneless and vaguely threatening as he works. You're not sure if it's a sea shanty or a curse against seagulls. Your bait today is unimpressive. A few squid bits, last night's fish guts, and one regrettable slice of turnip, don't ask. The good worms are all frozen or fled inland, but you pack it up anyway. No bait means no catch. No catch means your sister's goat eats better than you tonight. As you heave off the dock, the boat slides free into the fjord with the reluctant grace of a hungover ox. The water is glassy and dim, rippling only where your oars dip and splash. With each pull, your arms stretch and burn in that familiar, almost comforting way. It's the ache of repetition, of knowing this rhythm better than your own heartbeat. Cold wind cuts across your face, sharp as a blade. Your eyes water, but you pretend it's the salt. Salt or pride? Take your pick. Ahead, the fjord narrows into the throat, a bottleneck flanked by cliffs that rise like the jaws of a sleeping giant. Locals call one crag Thor's Beard. It's an odd name, given the thing looks more like a goat sneezed on a boulder, but traditions are traditions. You steer the Nar past the shadow of the beard. According to local gossip, some carved runes into the stone last year claiming Thor had a second beard on his back, but the elders burned that boat before the joke could catch on. Historians still argue whether Viking fishermen took daily routes like this one out of custom or pure superstition. You lean towards superstition. Why else would Roar mutter that old charm again? The one about keeping sea spirits out of the bilge water? Something about kissing the cold foam, not drowning in it. Poetic, if confusing. You try to ignore the fact that your left boot is already soaked. Your right one, mercifully, is merely damp. That's what passes for a wind these days. Birds circle overhead, mostly gulls, one ominous-looking raven. You don't make eye contact. Ravens are sacred to Odin, and some say they whisper to him about your deepest secrets. You really don't want the Allfather to know how often you dream of moving inland and starting a nice, quiet beekeeping hobby. Fun fact, Vikings did keep bees when they could. Mead doesn't make itself, after all. But not out here. Out here, the closest you'll get to sweet honey is the smell of Eggle's breath after he finds half a raisin in his lunch. As the boat hits open water, the chill deepens. You pull your wool cloak tighter and keep rowing. The sea stretches endlessly now, vast and silver, like a giant metal plate. Occasionally, a seal's head pops up to blink at you before disappearing again like a rude guest. You reach your first fishing spot, marked unofficially by a cluster of half-submerged rocks that resemble a sleeping walrus. No one agrees what they actually look like. You insist it's a walrus. Eggle claims it's an old witch. Roar says it's a pile of seal droppings, and he's not wrong. You pause. The oars rest in their locks. Silence spreads, broken only by water licking at the hull and Eggle's occasional sniffle. You breathe in. Cold, clean, fishy, and then the gentle chaos of getting the nets out. It's a group ballet of tangled ropes, clumsy coordination, and trying not to fall overboard while one of you inevitably shouts, "It's caught on my knife again." You hurl the nets with as much elegance as a drunk goose, but they land. Mostly, as the baited mesh sinks below, you lean over the side. The water is so clear, it almost tricks you into reaching in to grab a fish by hand. You know better. The last guy who tried that, bitten, not by a fish. Still unclear what it was. And so, with the nets down, the current rocking you gently, You settle into the most Viking part of Viking fishing life, the weight. The cold seeps in deeper. You smell your own damp boots. Somewhere behind you, Roar lets out a philosophical belch. And yet, somehow, you're content. Because this is what you do. This is who you are. The boat glides farther into open water, and the world turns very, very quiet. Just the soft creak of timber, the lap of the fjord against your hull, and the occasional snort from Egil as he clears his throat like a walrus gargling gravel. It's a moment of calm, a rare, sacred thing in a life, where calm usually means something bad is about to happen. Rowing becomes its own kind of trance. You push and pull, the oar slicing clean through the gray-blue water like old friends. Your back aches, your shoulders burn, and your thighs are beginning to remember last week's hill-climbing ordeal. But the rhythm grounds you. One beat at a time, you move through the frigid morning. As you round the bend in the fjord, the cliffs rear up beside you, ancient and wind-scoured. They loom like stone gods, keeping a slow eye on your passage. And there it is, Thor's beard, jutting out over the water like an enormous chin tuft made of lichen-streaked granite. Some say Thor once dragged his hammer across that rock in a fit of rage, cleaving a chunk off the mountain. Others say it's where he wiped his mouth after feasting on roasted whale. You prefer that version. It's messier, more relatable. Egil points to the cliff. It's growing, he says for the 6th time this month. You squint. It looks exactly the same. Still vaguely hairy. Still shaped like the world's least effective comb. Maybe your eyesight's shrinking. You offer. He throws a fish scale at you. But this little landmark matters. Viking fishermen didn't exactly have compasses. They used markers like these, distinct rocks, tree lines, weird-shaped islands, to map the sea in their minds. Historians still debate whether these early sailors passed down precise directions or just yelled, turn after the third seagull, and hoped for the best. Today, you're testing a new route, not too far from home, but just far enough that you feel mildly heroic about it. There's a promise in the air, or maybe that's just Egil opening the bait pouch. A sharp smell hits you. Definitely squid. Maybe a dash of regret. You've just retied your boots again when a gust of wind surges down off the cliffs. It catches your cloak and nearly pulls you sideways. The fjord does that sometimes, creates its own little gust pockets, cold and mischievous like a child with wet socks and too much time. Your nar wobbles but holds course. She may look like a beached pig when on land, but on the water, she moves with purpose. Somewhere behind you, Roar coughs into the wind. He's wrapped in what used to be a wool tunic, and now resembles a mobile mildew farm. You admire his resilience, if not his aroma. Feels like we're being watched, he mutters. You glance around. Sea's empty, save for a few distant birds and a curious-looking lump on a far rock that might be a seal or might be a trick of the light. You've learned not to argue with Roar's sixth sense. He once predicted a storm simply because his elbow itched. He was right, and very smug. Another gust hits. You brace the rudder, adjusting the boat's angle. The cliffs draw back, and suddenly, the fjord opens wide into a stretch of calmer water. You breathe a little easier, though your fingers remain clenched on the oar handles. You row until the sun, weak and low, peeks out from behind a cloud and pretends to warm your face. It's more moral support than heat, but you'll take it. And then there, the perfect spot. You recognize it by the color of the water, a deeper green with streaks of dark blue. That usually means a drop-off, where bigger fish sometimes gather. Or so says old Skeggy, who once claimed he taught a herring to dance by slapping his knees underwater. You drop anchor, a big rock tied to rope, because metal's expensive, and your actual anchor got stolen last fall by your cousin's cousin. He said it looked lonely. The boat slows to a sway. You rest the oars and look up. The cliffs are far behind now. The wind is calmed. Your breath curls out in front of you like steam from a forge. This moment, right here, this is the part you never admit you secretly love. You float on the edge of nowhere, where the sky and sea bleed into each other. And for a brief, quiet spell, you feel small in a way that's strangely peaceful. Not unimportant, just small, like one piece of something ancient and wide. Then Egil sneezes and wipes his hand on your sleeve. Back to reality. You unpack the second net, this one rigged for deeper trawling. As you do, you notice something strange. A long strand of kelp wrapped around a carved charm tied to the boat's frame. A small wooden fish with one eye missing. You don't remember carving it. Roar swears he didn't either. Maybe the boat carved it, Eggle says deadpan. You're about to laugh when a gull screams overhead, startling all three of you. Roar drops the bait knife. It lodges perfectly into the floorboard. We'll call that a sign. You mutter, although you're not sure of what. Fun tidbit. Some Norse believed certain boats had their own spirits, woken up after years of service or sacrifice. Some even buried old ships like honored warriors. You lean over the side, watching the sea swirl with tiny white bubbles and dark, darting shapes just below. The deep calls softly. You reply with a rope and a net. Let's see what bites. The nets spill over the side like heavy curtains, slapping the water with a soft, wet thud. You guide them carefully, watching as the weighted lines snake downward into the depths, disappearing into darkness, so complete it may as well be another world down there. A colder, wetter, smellier world, but full of riches, if the fish gods are kind. Eggle mutters something under his breath. You catch only the words sea trolls and goat's breath. He ties a twist of string around his wrist, some old charm his grandmother taught him, supposedly to keep the drogger from pulling him overboard. You tease him if your own belt didn't have a carved-tooth charm tied near the buckle. Superstition is half the job out here. That, and having fingers calloused enough to pick up a burning fish pan without flinching. There's a moment of calm now, the in-between moment. The nets are down. The oars are at rest. You're just floating, waiting for the sea to respond. But your boots are soaked, and that's what you notice most. Again, it's like your feet are personal enemies of the weather. Your socks squish when you shift, and the water's found its way into your right boot this time, which you were saving for later. You grit your teeth and flex your toes. Not that it helps. The cold's already gnawing at your soles like a very small, very determined frost spirit. Still, you pretend nothing's wrong. You're a Viking. You're used to it. You once walked half a mile on a frozen dock with a splinter the size of a bread knife in your heel. You cried exactly once. The boat rocks softly in the swell. Overhead, the sky lightens a shade, not quite blue, but a paler gray, which in these parts is basically beach weather. Roar reaches into the supply bag and pulls out a soggy lump of bread and dried cod. He offers you a piece. You decline. It smells like it's already halfway digested. He shrugs and eats it anyway. Somewhere off the starboard side, a seal bobs up like a floating snout with eyes. It stares at you, blinks once, then disappears below with a wet snort. You swear it looked judgmental. That's the same one from last week, Eggle says. Definitely judging us. You reply. Historians still argue whether seals were seen as simple sea creatures or something more. Spirits, omens, or even shapeshifters. There's an old tale about a fisherman who married a woman he found crying on the shore, only to discover she was a selkie, a seal in human form. When she found her hidden skin, she left him, diving back into the sea without a word. You try not to think about that as the water laps at your ankles and the net rope trembles in your hands. There's a twitch, a tug, then another. You brace your feet and haul, slow and steady, your hands tightening on the line. It's the kind of resistance that sends a warm jolt up your arms. Something's in the net, and it's not just weeds. You grunt. Eggle joins in, grabbing the second rope. Together you pull, and up it comes, slippery and writhing, a tangle of silver-scaled bodies flopping in panic. Herring, dozens of them, maybe more. The net sags with the weight as fish slap against each other in a frenzy of tail and fin. You haul it aboard with a wet crash, splashing your already damp knees. One fish slaps you in the face on the way down, leaving a faintly briny kiss on your cheek. You wipe it off with your sleeve and try to look dignified. That one liked you. Roar says deadpan. Jealous, you ask. But this is a good haul. A very good haul. The bottom of the boat floods with flopping bodies. It's chaos. Slippery, chaotic, and glorious. You stomp to pin them down, Eggle scoops with a woven basket, and Roar just sits there humming a strange tune that sounds suspiciously like a lullaby for fish. Among the silver chaos, you spot a strange one, a fish with a dark mark along its side, almost like a rune. You pick it up, holding it to the light. It twitches once, as if in protest, and you release it back into the sea. No need to tempt fate. Fun fact, Norse fishermen sometimes threw back oddly marked fish, believing them to be messengers, or worse, spies, from the sea gods. Better to be cautious than cursed. With the nets reset, you lean back against the side of the boat, breathing hard. The cold air burns pleasantly in your chest. The sun blinks weakly from behind a cloud. You close your eyes for a moment, listening to the slosh of water, the slap of fish tails, and the faint creak of wood. It's oddly peaceful, until your left boot makes that noise again, the squelch of doom. You sigh. The sea is your workplace, your pantry, your cathedral, and also your footbath, whether you like it or not. You open your eyes and glance at the horizon. Still gray, still cold, still yours. The sea begins to churn a little now, not a storm, not yet, but a definite shift. The soft rock of the boat turns jerky, the swell rolling just enough to make your stomach remember you skipped anything resembling a normal breakfast. Fish-scented fog wafts across the gunnels, like it's auditioning for a haunted house. Your nets lie heavy with the morning's haul, but that doesn't stop you from resetting them. Greed? Maybe, but mostly it's the rhythm of the day. Cast, wait, haul. Repeat until your fingers are raw and your back's muttering threats. Besides, you're trying to avoid thinking about your left foot, which now squishes with every movement like an old sponge in a cold stew. Out of the mist, you see it again. A seal. The same one. It's hard to tell. Big black eyes blink from a shiny head that bobs just a few boat lengths away. It floats there, motionless, as if judging you. Or maybe just waiting to steal a fish. That's the third time it's popped up, Eggle says, narrowing his eyes. I think it's following us. You squint. Maybe it likes your singing. Maybe it's a selkie, Roar mutters from the prow, where he's decided to lie flat, like a loaf of damp bread. Maybe it's the tax collector in disguise. You offer. That one gets a laugh, even from Roar, who hasn't blinked in 15 minutes. Still, the seal doesn't swim away. Just watches. Patient. Almost too patient. There's a tension to it now. A sense that the sea's holding its breath. Or maybe that's just your nerves responding to another drop in temperature. The net ropes twitch again, another haul, but this time it's more sluggish. Fewer fish, more weed. A tangle of sea gunk sloshes on board, and within it, something unexpected. A carved piece of driftwood, shaped like a bird. Not Norse. Not anything you recognize. Someone else's charm, Eggle says, turning it over in his hands. That's not ours. You shrug. Could be from another village. Could have floated here from the British Isles. Could have been spit up by Ran herself. She was said to collect the drowned in her net, after all. Historians still argue whether Ran was feared, worshipped, or both, depending on how bad your sailing luck had been. You toss the driftwood back into the sea. Roar says nothing but eyes it until it sinks. By midday, the cold has settled deep into your joints. You can feel it in your elbows, behind your teeth. Even the gulls seem sluggish, circling lazily, like they're second-guessing the effort. You pull out your lunch. It's a flattened bundle of smoked fish and a hardened crust of barley bread that could double as a weapon. You gnaw at it like a dog chewing a fence post. The bread fights back. The fish is mostly salt and memory. Eggle offers you a piece of his. It smells worse. Homemade, he says proudly. You nod, declining the invitation to future stomach trouble. It's aromatic. To pass the time, Roar tells a story. One you've heard before, but pretend you haven't. It involves a fisherman who caught a cod with golden scales and eyes like polished bone. He claimed it whispered his name before escaping. Swam off toward the sun. Roar says, eyes distant. Or he was very drunk, Eggle replies. Or both, you say, stuffing the last of the barley brick into your mouth. Fun tidbit. Some Viking sagas include stories of magical fish, omens, and even ghostly whales. These tales were passed down orally, changing a little each time, until no one was quite sure what was real and what was just Uncle Sigurd trying to one-up the neighbor. You lie back for a moment, staring up at the sky. It's lighter now, almost silvery, and the clouds shift like pulled wool. Your hands rest on your stomach, stiff from work, but warm beneath the wool cloak. And that's when you see it. Movement. Below the boat. Not fast. Not fish. Something larger. You sit up. The others notice too. Ripples arc out from the far side of the Nar. Gentle but deliberate. Then it's gone. What was that? Eggle whispers. Whale. You offer, though it didn't move like one. Maybe a log. Roar says, voice too casual. You exchange a glance. Historians still argue whether Viking sea monsters were just creative interpretations of whales and squids, or whether the sagas preserved hazy memories of real creatures now lost. Your crew doesn't care about the debate. You just know what you saw. Something. The sea settles again, quiet as before. But now the quiet feels different. Expectant. You set the nets once more, not because you expect more fish, but because it gives your hand something to do. The ropes slip into the sea, and you listen. To the wind, to the gulls, to the silence underneath it all. The seal resurfaces. Closer now. Watching. Maybe it is a selkie. Maybe it's just bored. Either way, you look away first. Time drifts by in the way it always does on the sea. Slow and sneaky. The sun hasn't moved much, but your body says it's well past midday. Your stomach says it's been ignored for hours. Your legs say they hate you. And your right boot, still waterlogged, squishes out a rhythmic complaint every time you shift your weight. Lunch is officially over. Or, more accurately, it never really began. You chew on a bit of dried cod just for the motion. It's tough as oak bark and about as flavorful. The salt is so thick it burns your tongue. Somewhere in the back of the boat, Eggle is picking bits of seaweed from between his teeth, like it's dessert. He offers you some. You decline, citing your allergy to slimy disappointment. Roar, still lying flat on the deck like he's preparing for burial, pulls a lump from his satchel, a suspiciously round thing wrapped in wool cloth. He peels it open and reveals his piece de resistance, a smoked something. It's brown, slightly sticky. It has identifiable fish parts. Maybe eel, possibly trout. Could be a mistake. You raise an eyebrow. Family recipe, he says proudly. You accept a small bite out of politeness. It's chewy, vaguely meaty, has a note of birch smoke and regret. You smile like your face forgot how to lie. It's mysterious, you say. Exactly. Roar beams. No one knows what's in it. That's the secret. Mainstream fact of the day. Viking food preservation relied heavily on smoking, salting, drying, and sometimes fermenting. You've eaten things aged longer than your cousin's marriage, and better preserved. A gust of wind lifts your hood. You pull it tighter and lean back against the side of the boat, where the wood is only a little damp. The net lines tug occasionally, but it's nothing urgent. You're drifting gently now, resting in open water, bellies half full, thoughts half awake. Eggle breaks the silence. So, he says, you believe in runefish? You blink. In what now? He sits up straighter, face serious, voice low like a bard about to deliver a scandalous tale. Fish, he says, with runes on their bones. Found one when I was a boy. Spine shaped like a tree rune. My uncle made me bury it in an anthill. You stare. That's a choice, you say. He said if I didn't, the fish would return in my sleep and whisper my fate. Did it? He shrugs. I snore too loud. Maybe it gave up. You chuckle, but Roar is nodding thoughtfully. I heard of a man in Hedeby who swore a mackerel told him when his cow would die. Useful fish, you say. Not really, says Eggle. Cow died early, so he blamed the fish, cooked it, then his wife left him. You let the story fade into silence. The boat rocks gently, the sky overhead washed out and pale. You glance toward the net again, still nothing urgent. You remember a tale your grandmother used to tell, about a fish so big it swallowed a boat whole and didn't even notice. She claimed it lived in the North Fjords, deep beneath the ice. Historians still argue whether such sea monsters were based on real sightings, massive whales, perhaps, or were just tales to scare children and keep them away from the docks at night. Either way, every time your net catches on something heavy, a tiny part of you expects it to pull back. The boat creaks as Roar sits up finally, stretching like a frostbitten cat. He peers into the water, brow furrowed. "Ever wonder what they think down there?" he asks. "The fish." He nods. "You think about it. Probably that we're loud, hungry, and smell like disappointment." You say. "Fair," Eggle adds, flicking a bit of scale at your boot. A breeze rolls in from the north. Cold again. Your nose starts to run, but your sleeves are already too dirty to help. You settle for sniffing dramatically. A gull screams overhead and dives for your boat, eyeing the fish stash. You wave it off with a bit of rope. It squawks, offended, then circles lazily, biding its time. You'll need to watch it. Viking gulls are fearless. One once stole a smoke tearing straight out of your mouth. Fun fringe tidbit. In some coastal villages, gulls were thought to carry the souls of drowned sailors. You're not sure if that makes them sacred or just extra rude. Something's tugging, Roar says suddenly. You scramble up, seizing the net line. It pulls harder this time, definitely a catch. Together, you haul it in. A few fish. A clump of seaweed. A rock. Another fish. Then a bone. It's small, curved, and pale. Smooth from time and tide. Definitely not fish. Maybe a bird. Maybe a seal. But it's been carved just faintly. A single rune etched into one side. You all freeze. Eggle whispers, "Fehu." Means wealth, Roar murmurs. Or livestock. You add. Depends who you ask. Historians still debate the meanings of Norse runes, symbols used for magic, marking property, or just scribbling rude notes on fences. Finding one in the sea, that's something else entirely. You hold the bone a moment longer before quietly slipping it back into the water. Let the sea keep its secrets. The sun hides behind the clouds again. The seal is gone. The breeze picks up, and you brace for what comes next. Lunch is over. The sea is calling again, and you're not quite sure what it wants. The rhythm of the wave starts to change, not louder, just heavier, like the sea is clearing its throat. The clouds drift lower, darkening to a shade of pewter, and your cloak pulls tighter across your back, as if it too senses a shift. You spit over the side, not for luck, but because you've got a piece of smoked fish scale stuck between your teeth and no dignity left. Eggle breaks the silence first, because of course he does. "So," he says, squinting into the mist, "do you think sea dragons are real, or just stories for drunk farmers?" You glance at him. That's the conversation we're having now. It's a serious question. Is it? Roar nods gravely from his place on the bench. I once saw a wave move against the wind. Just one wave. Like it was thinking. You sigh. That was probably just a current. Or a tale, he says. Like that settles it. The debate heats up as Eggle insists on describing a story where his cousin's friend swears they saw glowing eyes in the fjord, and Roar counters with a tale about a man who harpooned a sea demon, only to find it was a seal with seaweed stuck to its face. You offer your own theory. Maybe sea dragons are real, but only show up when you really don't want them to. Like taxes. This gets a snort of agreement from both of them, but the idea lingers in your mind, like the memory of a half-told tale. Sea dragons, or halfguffa, as they're sometimes called in the sagas, were said to be massive beasts, with gaping mouths large enough to swallow entire boats. Some claimed they lay on the sea floor, disguised as rocks, luring fish and fishermen alike. Historians still argue whether they were exaggerated whales, volcanic formations, or pure metaphor. You're not so sure. You've seen too much strange movement beneath the waves to discount everything. A soft thump beneath the hull draws your attention. Not hard, not sharp, just a single nudge. All three of you freeze. Another bump. Then nothing. You exchange glances, no one speaking. Eggle finally says, "Probably driftwood." "Probably." You echo. The sea doesn't like to be named too loudly, especially when it might be listening. You turn your focus back to the nets. Nothing's moved for a while, but there's something unsettling about the stillness now. as if the fish know something you don't. To shake the tension, you decide to check the backup net, the smaller one you dropped an hour ago near the rocky outcrop that looks vaguely like a sagging walrus. You haul it in. Seaweed. A few startled crabs. One fish. Barely worth the effort. Even the fish are hiding. Roar mutters. Smart fish, you say. Eggle flops backward dramatically, arms spread. Bored. Bored of water. Bored of wind. Bored of you too. You toss a herring at his face. He fails to dodge it, then eats it anyway. Somewhere behind the boat, a gull cries, a long, sharp, rising wail. You turn. It's not diving, just circling, wings rigid, staring down like a pale judge from a sky. You squint at the horizon, trying to guess the time. The sun's little more than a glowing patch behind a wall of clouds. The air's heavy, weighted like a toothache blanket that smells of mildew and warning. There's no rain yet, but it's thinking about it, to pass the time, and to distract yourselves from the unease creeping over the gunnels. You all start sharing fish stories. Eggle tells of a monk who blessed a catch so rich it sank the boat. Roar insists he once saw a herring school move in the shape of a dragon. You talk about the one time your line caught something so heavy it bent the iron hook into a curl. You never saw what it was. You still think about it. That hook hangs on the wall at home. You use it to hang onions. A fringe tidbit floats back into your mind. Some Norse fishermen believed that if you made too much noise at sea, the water would grow jealous and hide its bounty. You'd be ignored by the fish. Shunned. That's why some elders never spoke while casting their lines. Only hand signals and long stares. You wonder, briefly, if that's what's happening now. Maybe the sea is sulking. The wind rises a little more. The boat shifts. The nets bob. Still no new catch. Then Roar mutters, "Look." He's pointing toward the waterline, where something just broke the surface. A ridge. Long and dark. Gone in a second. You lean over. Nothing but ripples remain. Just driftwood, Eggle says, a little too quickly. Sure, Roar says. A long piece. With scales. You all go quiet again. The mood changes. What was playful curiosity turns thoughtful, uneasy. You've seen plenty of strange things on the sea, but something about today, this silence, this seal, this stillness, feels different. Not dangerous. Not yet. But watching. You reset the net anyway, because that's what you do. The boat sways. Your knees ache. Your fingers sting with the chill. And still, you keep working. Because dragons or not, mystery or not, boredom or lurking doom, you're a Viking fisherman. You don't stop. You fish. The sky starts to wrinkle at the edges, deepening from dull gray to a moody charcoal. Not quite night yet, but close enough that the shadows stretch longer across the water, and your eyes begin to play tricks. That bump, just a wave. That glint, probably fish scale. That distant shape rising out of the water, log. You tell yourself it's a log. You tug your cloak tighter and shift on the bench. The sea is growing colder, and not just in temperature. It has a mood now, an attitude, like it's been watching you all day and has finally decided to get involved. You'd thank it for the attention if your left boot weren't currently trying to grow moss. The net line quivers. All three of you tense, like dogs hearing a door creak in the night. You pull, expecting the same, fish, seaweed, maybe another carved bone if the sea's feeling dramatic. But this time, it's heavier. Really heavy. You brace, plant your feet, and heave. The net groans against the drag. The boat lists slightly to port. Eggle grabs the edge for balance, while Roar stands slowly, hands gripping the mast as if expecting the boat to launch itself skyward. Whatever it is, you grunt. It's either really big or really stuck. Eggle finishes. The net breaks the surface, wet, knotted, heavy with something dark and uncooperative. You all lean in, peering through the mesh, and then you see it. Not a fish. A jawbone. Large, curved, almost serpentine, but not quite. The teeth, what's left of them, are worn down, some missing, others sharp as oyster knives. The bone itself is old, pitted with time, wrapped in strands of weed and barnacle. A rune is carved faintly along one side, half erased by sea. Roar lets out a breath. Not fear. Not surprise. Something in between. You should throw it back, he says, very softly. But you don't. You hold it. There's weight in it. Not just the bone, but significance. Like it knows it's been found. Your fingers tingle. Your chest feels too tight for your ribs. The wind whistles a little lower, like it's coming closer for a listen. Eggle squints. Whale. No. You and Roar say at the same time. Historians still argue about North Sea relics, strange bones, carved stones, offerings found far from any village. Were they religious? Practical? Warnings? You've never seen anything like this, and yet it feels familiar, like something from a half-remembered dream your grandmother used to whisper about when the fire got low. You set the bone down at the bottom of the boat, not carelessly, gently, respectfully, and you all agree, without speaking, to say nothing more about it. For now, you fish more, but the mood has changed. Even the sea seems quieter. No more bumps. No more tugging. No more seal. It's as if the ocean has given you something and is now waiting to see what you'll do with it. To break the silence, Eggle starts humming a tune, something off-key and cheerful, probably learned from a drunk trader. You welcome the sound. It pulls you back to earth, back to the boat, back to the very normal task of waiting for fish in freezing weather with numb fingers and a questionable lunch sloshing in your gut. You check your catch again. A few more herring, a cod, one small eel that seems personally offended to be here. It hisses at you. You drop it into the storage box and tell it to calm down. Fun tidbit. Vikings didn't name their fish, but you're beginning to think that eel deserves one. You settle on Sigurd because it looks like it might hold a grudge. You glance out to sea, squinting at the darkening horizon. A bank of fog has crept in without a sound. Thick, heavy, moving fast. You curse softly under your breath. Time to go, Roar says. You don't argue. Fog out here is a trickster. It eats direction, swallows the shore, and spins you in circles until you're rowing in place and arguing about which side the sun sets on. You've seen it turn seasoned sailors into blubbering wrecks, and that was just light fog. You haul up the net, quick but careful. The boat tilts with the weight, the last fish thudding into the storage trough. You secure everything, pulling the lines, and double-check the charm tied to the tiller. Still there, still pointing toward home. Hopefully. You grip the oars. Eggle takes one side, Roar the other. The Nar turns slowly, carving a path through the dark water. Fog swallows you. Not all at once, just the edges, like a curtain drawing inward. Sound dampens. The water beneath you grows still, reflective. You can hear your own breathing. The creak of the oarlocks sounds like shouting. Eggle murmurs, I hate this part. You know it. We all do. The shore is out there. Somewhere. The fjord will guide you. If you stick to its curves, follow its memory, trust the feel of the water beneath your hull. It's not just rowing, it's reading. The fog closes tighter. The boat becomes the entire world. You watch Roar's back rise and fall as he rows. Eggle hums again, quieter this time, maybe to keep the silence from swallowing him. You find a rhythm. Push, pull, breathe. And behind you, tucked gently against the bench, the old jawbone rests, waiting. The fog has teeth now. Not the biting kind, not yet, but the kind that gnaw at your sense of direction. Everything looks the same. The water, the mist, even Eggle's ear, which you've now been staring at for what feels like a week, has taken on the shape of an ominous rock formation in your mind. You row harder, not faster, just with more hope. Every stroke is a prayer disguised as effort. You imagine the fjord beneath you, its curves and channels etched into your memory like runes on bone. If you guess wrong, you could end up in the shallows. Or worse, on the reef where the tide eats boats and leaves only splinters. Eggle mutters under his breath. You don't ask what about. You know that tone. He's arguing with the gods again. Still think we're heading the right way? Roar asks. He hasn't blinked in half an hour. Sure, you lie. It's not a complete lie. You've done this route hundreds of times. The shore should be eastward, maybe 200 strokes away. You think. Probably. The fog thickens, clinging to your lashes like cobwebs. You can't even see the water anymore. Just a part of the boat directly in front of you and the ghostly outlines of your crewmates. Eggle looks like a story now, not a person. Some kind of mist spirit with chapped lips. A gull cries out somewhere above, but the sound is warped, twisted. It could be behind you, or 10 feet above, or in your own head. You pause, oars resting across your knees. Silence. Heavy. Absolute. And then, you hear it. Knock. Just a soft knock. From beneath the hull. You freeze. Eggle hears it too. His eyes snap to yours. Tell me that was driftwood. You don't answer. Because it wasn't. It wasn't even near the hull. It was under it. Directly beneath your feet. A single, slow knock. Deliberate. Curious. Your hand goes to the charm tied at your belt. Just a simple piece of carved wood. Worn smooth by time and habit. Not magic. Not really. But suddenly you want it near. Fun fact. Vikings often carried personal charms. Small carvings of Thor's hammer, runes, or even tiny fish bones. Believed to protect them from bad luck, spirits, or the sea itself. Historians still argue whether these were true religious items or just early forms of lucky socks. Another knock. Closer this time. Or louder. Roar whispers. The bone. You glance toward the bottom of the boat, where the jawbone still rests. It hasn't moved. Of course it hasn't. It's a jawbone. But something about it feels awake. You grab the oars. Row. Now. No arguments. Eggle and Roar join in. And together you row like your lives depend on it. Which, statistically speaking, they might. You row harder than you've ever rowed. And suddenly you feel something shift beneath you. As if the sea itself is rising to meet the hull. A soft swell. A gentle push. It helps. The boat lurches forward, and the fog begins to thin, just slightly. Shapes emerge, shadowy outlines that might be trees, or cliffs, or the answer to a prayer. The air sharpens, smells faintly of pine. You've hit the channel. You made it. Not home, not yet, but close. The fjord narrows here, funneling you between familiar cliffs like a guide with granite hands. You ease up on the oars. Your arms are jelly. Your knees creak like bad floorboards, and your stomach wants to mutiny. Behind you, the fog lingers. Waiting. Watching. Eggle doesn't look back. Let's not fish that spot again. Agreed, says Roar, rubbing the charm at his neck like it might whisper reassurance. You nod and allow yourself one breath. Just one. But the unease doesn't fade. Not entirely. As you float into clearer water, something comes into view up ahead. A wooden pole, topped with a carved bird. A marker. A boundary post. You're almost at the edge of the fishing grounds. Relief starts to settle in your shoulders, until you spot something tied to the post. A fish. Split and gutted. Nailed through the gills, with a rusted spike. Its scales have been arranged into a symbol, not a rune you know. The gulls haven't touched it. Not a single feather in sight. Is that a warning? Eggle asks. Or a message? Roar says quietly. You glide past it, saying nothing. Viking fishermen were territorial. Sometimes violently so. It wasn't uncommon for villages to mark their waters, subtly or otherwise. But this feels older, cruder, like something made in anger, not order. The rest of the journey passes in silence. No songs, no stories, no eel-naming jokes. Even the wind seems to tread carefully around the boat. You finally see it home. Just a cluster of huts tucked beneath the cliffs, smoke curling from chimneys. The familiar slope of the dock reaching into the water like an open hand. You want to kiss the dirt. You tie off the gnar. Your legs shake as you step out, boots sloshing like drowned pigs. A dog barks in the distance. Children laugh. Someone calls for firewood. It's almost normal, except it isn't, because the jawbone is still in the boat, and it's still warm. You don't touch it again, not the bone. You leave it in the boat, tucked behind a coil of rope, like a forgotten tool. No one speaks of it, but all three of you glance at it with the same silent thought. Let someone else find it. Maybe the wind will carry it off. Maybe the sea will take it back. Maybe it'll vanish, like fish stories in the morning sun. You'd rather not be the one to test its patience. Back on land, everything feels oddly bright. The muddy path to the houses is streaked with tracks, boots, goats, a chicken or two with a death wish. The air smells of smoke and sweat and damp wool. Someone's been baking flatbread. Someone else has clearly been attempting to tan seal hide, and not very successfully. The village is busy with its usual quiet bustle. People greet you with half-smiles, raised eyebrows, and a few jokes about your soggy appearance. But when they spot the catch, those baskets sloshing with fish, they nod with respect. A good haul is a good haul, even if you had to dance with fog demons to get it. Eggle immediately begins exaggerating the size of your largest herring to anyone who'll listen. Roar heads off to check on his sister's roof, which supposedly collapsed under too much air. You're not sure what that means, but you let him go. You, however, have work to do. You head toward the fish shed, a low stone structure with wooden racks, buckets of brine, and an unfortunate smell that could punch a bear in the throat. Inside it's dim. The air is thick. Flies buzz lazily, immune to shame. You set the first basket down. It sloshes. One fish flops in protest. You salute it out of habit, and then you get to work. First, the gutting. You take the knife from its hook on the wall, old, bone-handled, slightly bent like your uncle's spine, and start with the herring. Slice, flick, scrape. It's rhythmic, almost meditative, unless you hate fish guts. Then it's the exact opposite of meditative. You slice a little too deep into one and hit something hard. You frown. Pull it apart carefully. Inside the belly, a tiny sliver of metal, almost like a pin. Bent, rusted, too smooth to be a bone. A swallowed nail. You blink. It's not unheard of. Fish sometimes eat all sorts of nonsense. Buttons, beads, even small rings. But something about this one feels intentional. You set it aside, making a mental note to not eat that fish later. Mainstream fact: Norse communities often preserved fish by salting and drying them on wooden racks. Fish were a major food source and trade good, especially herring and cod, but the occasional odd find inside them wasn't unheard of. Historians still argue whether such found objects were ever seen as omens. There are mentions in folk stories of black stones in fish mouths being signs of storms, or rusted hooks warning of betrayal. But these stories walk the line between superstition and storytelling. You keep gutting. Another herring. Then another. You lose count. The floor grows slick. Your sleeves damp. You swipe a hand across your forehead and smear fish oil into your hair. Lovely. You hum under your breath. Something low and tuneless. Not a song so much as a sound to keep your thoughts from wandering back to fog and knocking hulls. And that's when you hear it. Behind you. A creak. Not the door. Not the rafters. The floorboards. The exact ones near the basket. You turn. Nothing. But you feel it. That same tightness in your chest. Like earlier on the boat. The weight in the air. A sense that something is watching you. You glance toward the doorway. There's a shadow there. You blink. It's gone. You're tired. Obviously. Just tired. You've been on the water all day. Rode through cursed fog. Found a mystery jawbone. Argued with a sentient eel. It's fine. You're fine. Everything's fine. You resume working, just a little faster. Behind you, a fish flops again. Loud. Desperate. You don't turn this time. You finish getting the last fish. Wash your hands in the basin that smells like ancient seaweed, and hang your cloak on the peg by the door. You're done for now. The drying and salting will come later. For now, food. You walk home quickly. Past the fire pit. Past the communal shed. Past the goat that tries to headbutt you daily. You glare at it. It glares back. Mutual understanding. Inside your house, the hearth glows low. You light a new flame with flint and kindling, boil a small pot of barley, and toss in some of the more respectable fish. You eat sitting on the floor, cross-legged, still in half-wet socks. The food tastes better than it should. Maybe it's the warmth. Maybe it's the fact you're not rowing anymore. Your fingers ache. Your shoulders groan. You stretch once, lie back, and stare at the thatch above. And then you remember. The bone. Still in the boat. Still waiting. You close your eyes and promise yourself not to think about it. Not until tomorrow. Maybe never. You wake up with your cheek stuck to your own forearm and your spine curled like an angry shrimp. It's still dark, but there's a pale band of light leaking through the cracks in the shutter. Not full morning yet, just the awkward in-between, where your body thinks it's time to get up, but your soul violently disagrees. You sit up slowly. Every joint creaks in protest. Your tunic smells like smoke, fish, and sleep sweat. It's a scent only a Viking fisherman could call comforting. A distant rooster lets out a strangled crow. You hate that rooster. You think it's judging you. You glance around your small home. Low rafters, fur-draped bench, a pile of tools in the corner that you keep meaning to organize. The hearth is little more than a bed of gray ash now, so you toss in a few splinters of birch bark and coax it back to life. You stretch once, twice, and then pull on your outer cloak, still slightly damp from yesterday. There's one thing you need to do before anything else. Check the boat. Not because you want to, not even because you need to, but because you have to. Something's been tugging at the back of your mind all night, like a splinter you can't find. The jawbone. You step outside into the cold morning air. It bites, but it's not cruel. The sky is still bruised from night, but the eastern edge glows faintly pink. The village is quiet, save for a dog snoring near the longhouse and someone chopping kindling far off. The dock creaks beneath your boots as you make your way down to the shore. The tide is low, revealing the slippery black rocks beneath. Seaweed slaps against the pilings with little wet sighs. Your boat, the Nar, rocks gently in the shallow water, tied where you left it. You climb in and stop. The jawbone is gone. You stare at the place it had been. The rope coil still lies there, undisturbed. No signs of a splash. No drag marks. Just absence. You check under the bench, around the storage crate, even in the fish trough, as ridiculous as that sounds. Nothing. You sit very still. You think, maybe Eggle took it. Maybe Roar. Maybe it shifted and fell into the water. Maybe a crow dropped from the sky, snatched it, and flew away because it thought it was some kind of glorified chew toy. All of these are better explanations than the one that hovers in the cold space behind your neck. Because if none of those things happened, then the bone left on its own. And that is not a thought you want to entertain before breakfast. You row a short loop along the shore just to settle your nerves. The sky slowly lightens. The wind picks up slightly, bringing the smell of fish, salt, and someone baking rye bread. You let yourself float, the Nar rocking gently. A seal pops up nearby, blinks at you, and disappears again without a sound. You murmur, "You didn't take it, did you?" The seal doesn't reply. Typical. Fun fact, some Viking beliefs held that certain seals, especially the lone ones that followed boats, were not animals at all, but humans under a spell. Selkies, they were called in later folklore. Some even said they could swap skins and walk among us, unnoticed. Historians still argue whether these stories began with real events or just long winters and overactive imaginations. You drift a while longer, then return to shore. Still no sign of the bone. You ask Eggle casually when you run into him by the well. "The what?" he says, blinking sleep out of his eyes. "No, I didn't touch it. I don't touch weird fish things unless they're paying rent." You believe him, mostly because Eggle once lost a finger to a snapping crab and now refuses to touch anything that can be described as bony. Roar is less helpful. He just stares into the middle distance when you ask. "If it wanted to leave," he says slowly. "Maybe it didn't like how we looked at it." "Are you serious?" He shrugs. "Would you want to be stared at while you're trying to nap?" You decide not to press it. You spend the rest of the morning pretending to be productive, mending a net with more knots than sense, checking the fishing hooks for rust, feeding a goat that does not appreciate your efforts. But your thoughts keep drifting back to the boat, to the missing bone, to the knock. You think about that sound again. Not a wave, not a bump, a knock, like a question, and now no answer. By mid-afternoon, you retreat to the communal fire near the longhouse. Several others are there, old women weaving, children arguing about the best way to trap a mouse, two men debating whether salted cod is better than smoked eel. You sit, warm your hands. and try to listen to the normal rhythm of your village. It helps. For a while. Until one of the older men, a fisherman like you, retired after his knees gave out, says something strange. You feel that, he murmurs. Feel what? Someone asks. He points out toward the sea. Like the tide's coming a little too fast. Everyone glances. It does seem higher than usual. Nothing dramatic. Just subtly off. The boats float a little freer. The gulls have moved farther inland. A dog howls once, then stops. You stare at the horizon. Fog. Thin. Far away. But unmistakably forming. You rub your hands together and try not to think of jawbones or vanished seals or the way a knock can travel through water. You tell yourself it's nothing. Because you have to. You don't sleep well that night. Not because of noise, there isn't any. Not even the usual soft rustle of wind through the thatch or the late-night snoring from the neighboring hut, which typically sounds like someone strangling a walrus. No, it's too quiet. The kind of quiet that presses into your ears and makes you aware of every heartbeat, every breath, every creak of your own bones when you roll over. You lie there with your eyes closed, then open, then closed again. At one point you dream of rowing endlessly through fog that keeps folding in on itself. You dream of a fish with human eyes that says, "We warned you." You dream of the sea, wide and deep, and the jawbone floating just beneath the surface, slowly opening. When you wake, your mouth tastes like old iron and your shoulders ache like you've slept under a sack of stones. You crawl out of bed and into another gray morning, rubbing sleep from your eyes with the corner of your sleeve. Outside, the fog hasn't returned, not visibly, but the air feels heavy, close, like the world is holding its breath. You walk down to the boat without really deciding to. Just a pull, a tug in your chest like a fishing line left untied. The nar bobs calmly in the water. All your gear is as you left it, nets coiled, crate stacked, a small smudge of fish guts on the gunnel. You check the spot where the bone had been. Still empty. Still nothing. But something is different. You peer closer and notice it. The coils of rope are wet again, as if someone, or something, has been in the boat during the night. You touch them. Cold, slick, recently disturbed. A voice behind you nearly makes you fall into the water. You're still looking for it. You whirl around to see Roar standing there, holding a small pouch of dried herbs and looking annoyingly calm for someone who just scared a decade off your life. "Don't sneak up like that," you snap. He shrugs. "Didn't sneak. You just weren't listening." You rub your temples. The rope's wet. Something was here. Roar peers into the boat, then nods slightly. You think it's following you now. "No," you say. "I know it is." He scratches his beard. "I asked around. Old Brynhild said there's a story about bones that wash up after storms. Only during certain moons. She says they're pieces of the drowned god's teeth." You stare. That's helpful. He shrugs again. "She's very old. Mainstream historical fact. Norse mythology included the belief in drowned gods and sea spirits, lesser known than Thor or Loki, but feared along the coasts. Some claimed that particularly violent storms were caused by them rolling in their watery graves. Offerings were made to calm the sea, including, sometimes, fish or bones wrapped in cloth and cast into deep fjords. "Do you think we should tell someone?" You ask. Roar shakes his head. "Tell them what? That a fish jaw vanished? That the water knocked politely, and now we're being stalked by ancient molars?" You glare at him. He adds, "Besides, weird stuff always happens to fishermen. People expect us to be a little odd." He's not wrong. But still you're uneasy. The fog, the knocking, the missing jaw, the strange tide, and now the ropes. What again? You row out anyway. Because what else are you supposed to do? The sea doesn't pause because you're paranoid. It doesn't stop offering fish just because your gut says something's off. Life continues, and so do you. This time, Egil doesn't join you. Something about tending to his goat's emotional needs. You didn't ask. You don't want to know. Roar comes along, silent and focused. No jokes. No humming. He casts the net without a word, watches the horizon like it might bite him. You row. The silence sits with you like an old aunt who doesn't approve of your choices. The water is calmer than usual, too calm. No wind, no gulls, no seals, no movement at all. It's like rowing through oil. You glance into the net bucket. Still empty. You wait. You both wait. A single fish jerks the line. Then nothing again. Roar mutters. Feels like the sea's holding its breath. You nod. I don't think it likes us today. He looks out across the still water. Or maybe it's waiting for something. You both sit in that thought for a while. Then you pull in the net. Nothing but silt. Fringe tidbit. Some Norse fishermen swore the sea could sulk. That it would refuse to give up fish if it felt insulted or disrespected. Too much noise. Too many curses. Or rowing in the wrong rhythm. It was treated almost like a moody deity, with personalities and grudges. You pack up earlier than usual. You both pretend it's because the fish aren't biting, but you both know better. On the row back, you notice something strange. The carved boundary pole that marks your village's fishing edge. It's missing. You blink. Where's the marker? Roar stops rowing. You both stare at the empty water. The pole has always been there, tied into rocks, carved deep, a piece of local history. Gone. No splash. No damage. Just gone. You keep rowing. Neither of you speak the whole way back. When you dock, a few people are there, waiting. Some curious, some concerned. There was a sound last night, someone says. Like drums under the water. Another person nods. And the tides came high again. Wrong time. You exchange a glance with Roar. Something is building. Something is waiting. And the sea. It isn't done with you yet. By the next morning, the entire village is humming with a low, steady unease. No one says it out loud, of course. Vikings aren't the kind of people to panic over strange weather or missing fish markers. But you can feel it in the way everyone talks slightly softer, in the sideways glances at the shore, and how even the dogs stay closer to the fire. Something is off, and everyone knows it. You wake early, though you're not sure you really slept. You dreamed again of the sea, of shadows beneath the boat, of something watching just below the surface. You dreamed of the jawbone, but this time it had eyes. You shake it off. Sort of. You're supposed to meet Roar at the far dock, to inspect the outer traps, smaller basket contraptions tied to rocky shelves just beyond the inlet. It's your turn. You'd rather wrestle a seal. But duty is duty, and fish don't wait for fear. As you head through the village, you pass Eggle, who is teaching his goat to walk on a balance beam made of 2 barrels and a plank. You blink. What are you doing? Training, he says flatly. If the sea gets weird, she's coming with me. Right. You carry on. The sky overhead is blank. Not gray, just pale, like a cloth stretched over the sun. The wind isn't blowing, and the trees don't move. Even the ravens seem confused, hopping from branch to branch instead of flying. One of them caws at you like it's trying to form a sentence. You find Roar waiting, arms folded, expression unreadable. He nods in greeting, and together you shove off in a small rowboat. No sail, no nets, just you, him, and the creak of oars. The water beyond the inlet is darker than usual. Not rough, but dense. The kind of dark that swallows reflections. The fish traps bob ahead, 2 baskets woven of willow, tied with sealskin rope to stakes hammered into the rocks, or where the trap should be, because when you arrive, they're gone. Both. Rope snapped clean. Stakes missing. You frown. That's not tide damage. No, Roar says. That's pulled. He leans over the edge of the boat, scanning the rocks below. Nothing left. Not even a tangle. You circle the area, looking for debris. You find one shard of basket, waterlogged and riddled with tiny circular bite marks. You hold it up. Crabs. Roar shakes his head. Not like that. The marks are precise. Patterned. Too uniform. Fun fact. Some Norse myths include tales of sea creatures with intricate mouths, multi-ringed, lamprey-like, or grinding teeth, said to sound like millstones underwater. Fishermen would sometimes carry hollow reeds to listen through the hull. If they heard the grinding, they rowed very fast in the opposite direction. Roar doesn't say anything for a long time. Then, finally, do you remember when we were young, and that man from the next fjord overwarned us not to fish on the wrong moon? You squint. You mean Thormund? The one who tried to marry a tree? Roar shrugs. Say what you want. He never lost a boat. You sit back. Let the oars float in the locks. The boat rocks gently, but not from waves. It feels like something underneath is shifting. Maybe we should stop, you say quietly. Just for a while. No one's going to like that. Roar mutters. Do you like this? You both look out over the fjord. The water is still. The sky is blank. And just beyond the rocks, a long ripple cuts across the surface, as if something very large has changed its mind. Back in the village, word spreads faster than it should. Someone's goats won't go near the water. A child swears they saw a hand reach out of the shallows and pull a stick under. Someone else found a twisted fish trap on the shore with all the fish inside peeled. Not eaten, peeled. You hold a quiet meeting with the other fishermen that night. Just 10 of you, gathered around a low fire in the storage hall. The mood is heavy, thick. We should bless the nets, someone says. Bless the sea, says another, or leave it alone. That suggestion sits like a stone in the room. No one agrees, but no one disagrees either. Historians still argue whether Norse coastal rituals were truly religious or more like community therapy. Blessings, chants, carvings. It's unclear how much was belief versus tradition. But when people fear what they cannot name, they reach for anything that feels like control. You volunteer to lead a ritual at dawn, not because you believe it'll work, but because something must be done. So, as the sun creeps up the edge of the world, you stand at the dock with a bundle of herbs, a cup of salt water, and the old carved hammer you inherited from your grandfather. The village gathers. No one speaks. You sprinkle the salt water into the fjord, burn the herbs, speak aloud, not to the sea gods by name, but to whatever is listening. You say, we mean no harm. We take only what we need. Return what's lost. Leave what's forgotten. Let us pass safely. Then you toss the hammer into the water. It sinks like a stone. Everyone waits. Nothing happens. No rumble. No cloud parting. Just water lapping against the posts. And then, a splash. Not far. Just at the edge of the marker post. You squint. The jawbone bobs to the surface. Right where it started. Wet. Clean. Facing the village. And smiling. No one moves. You all just stand there, watching the thing float in silence, like it's waiting for a round of applause. It bobs gently with the current, nose, if you can even call it that, pointed toward the dock, as if it had swum there under its own power and parked itself, with a sense of purpose. Someone behind you whispers, "Is that the same bone?" Another voice, older, raspy. "What else would it be?" You want to walk away. You really do. But your legs have other plans. Instead, you find yourself stepping forward, just one boot at a time, until you're standing at the very edge of the dock, close enough to reach out. You don't. Not yet. Instead, you crouch, squinting at it. The bone looks different. Not entirely, but cleaner. The barnacles are gone. The seaweed is gone. It looks polished, smooth, and that rune along the side, the one you could barely read before, now it's distinct, sharp, still unfamiliar, but deliberate, not something etched by time or teeth. Can anyone read this? You ask over your shoulder. An old woman steps forward, Brynhild, half-blind, usually drunk on juniper mead, but sharp as a whetstone when it comes to strange things. She leans over, blinks at the bone, and hisses through her teeth. It's not a rune. Not one of ours. That's older. Older than us, you ask. Older than the land, maybe. Then, as casually as one might mention spoiled butter. It's a warning. You feel your stomach turn sideways. What kind of warning? She just shrugs and walks away. Thanks, Brynhild. You finally pick it up. It's warm again. Not hot, just warm, like it's been sitting by a fire. The weight is the same. The teeth are still cracked. But holding it now feels like holding a question that already knows the answer. You wrap it in cloth and carry it into the longhouse, where a small crowd has gathered. The air is thick with boiled cabbage and tension. Eggle is there. He frowns when he sees the bundle. Please tell me that's your lunch. It's back, you say simply. He blinks. No, it's not. That's not how objects work. I know. You set it on the center table, unwrapping it like a precious relic. People lean in. Some cross themselves. Some back away. One child stares at it with an expression you really don't like, curious, but almost familiar. You nudge the bone closer to Eggle. Want to hold it? He recoils like it bit him. No thanks. I like my hands where they are. Roar enters, takes one look, and lets out a slow, exasperated breath. Well, the sea gave it back. That's probably not a good sign. No, you agree. It's not. You discuss it as a group. Should you burn it? Bury it? Throw it into another fjord? Sail it out past the horizon and drop it into the deep trench the old men whisper about after too much ale? Every option sounds like a bad idea, but doing nothing feels worse. Mainstream historical fact. Some Norse communities believed in returning cursed or sacred objects to the earth or sea, through burial, burning, or ritual sacrifice. These weren't necessarily punishments. Often, they were about balance. You take, you give back. The world stays level. Historians still argue whether this practice came from fear of divine wrath, or just a deeply rooted respect for the natural order. But the line between reverence and fear in Viking society was famously blurry. Finally, an old hunter with half a nose and no patience speaks up. Don't destroy it, he says. Return it properly. To where? Someone asks. He shrugs. Where you found it, or where it found you. There's a long pause. Everyone turns to you. Of course, you're the lucky one. So, just after sunset, you pack the boat. No nets, no gear, just the jawbone, wrapped tight and tied down like it might try to leave again. Roar comes with you. Eggle, to his credit, agrees to stand watch from shore with a torch and a very large stick. You row. The fjord is still. The sky above is streaked with violet and copper, clouds stretched like pulled wool. The fog hasn't returned, but the air feels like fog. Wet, watchful, waiting. You return to the place it began, right at the mouth of the bay, where the water darkens and the land drops away into a deep, ancient channel. The oars creak. The boat drifts. You stand. Roar holds the bow steady. He doesn't speak. He doesn't need to. You unwrap the bone, your fingers trembling just slightly. The rune glows faintly in the twilight. You say nothing fancy. Just this. We don't want it. We didn't ask for it. We brought it back. Then you let it slide over the edge. It sinks slowly. No splash. No sound. Just vanishing. Gone. You both sit. You wait. 1 minute. 2. And then the wind returns. Not harsh. Not angry. But present. The water stirs. The boat rocks gently. A bird cries in the distance, a real one this time. The silence breaks, just a little. And when you look up, the stars begin to appear overhead, clearer than you've seen in days. You exhale for the first time in what feels like forever. Think it worked? Roar asks. You shrug. No idea. But you feel better? Not at all. Still, you row home. And this time, nothing knocks from below. You wake the next morning expecting something. A sign. A sound. A bone on your doorstep with a passive-aggressive rune that translates to nice try. But the world is ordinary again. Birdsong. Smell of smoke. The neighbor's goat head butting a barrel for reasons known only to goats. You stretch out under your furs, blink at the sunbeam slipping through the shutters, and for a moment, almost believe the whole thing never happened. Almost. But your arms are still sore from all that rowing. Your hands still smell faintly of salt and fish. And when you walk past the dock, you glance down at the water just to make sure nothing is floating there, nothing smiling. The villagers are moving like usual, back into their rhythms. Eggle's teaching his goat to jump through a hoop now. Brynhild is yelling at a raven. A small boy runs by wearing a fish on his head like a helmet. Back to normal. Whatever normal means in a Norse fishing village, where bone spirits occasionally join your crew without asking. Still, The fog hasn't returned. The sea feels lighter. You can't quite explain it, but even the air tastes different. Less like wet metal, more like pine and potential. You gather your gear and head out for a real day's work. Nets, baskets, salt for preserving. No ominous bones today. Just fish. Honest, wriggling, slightly dumb fish. Roar meets you at the dock, already chewing on a piece of jerky like it owes him money. Back to it. You know it. Back to it. You push off. The boat glides out over water, so clear you can see the rocks beneath. The oars slide in and out of the fjord like they're relieved, too. You fish in silence for a while, both of you working smoothly, efficiently, like you've done 100 times before and planned to do 100 more. And then you catch something strange. Not dangerous, not cursed, just strange. A fish, fat and silver, with a single golden scale on its back. Roar leans in. What do you think it means? You shrug. Probably nothing. You toss it into the basket, but still you mark the spot, because if the sea's going to start giving out gold, you'd like to be there for it. Fun fact, some sagas mention king's fish. Rare catches believed to be gifts or omens. A fish with golden markings, unusually large eyes, or strange bones might be shown to the village elder or even offered to a chieftain. Historians still argue whether these were real phenomena or just clever marketing by fishermen who wanted a day off. Later, back on land, you smoke your catch over a clean fire. You joke with Eggle. You throw a stick for that weird raven that now follows you around like a moody sidekick. And when you turn in for the night, belly full and fingers stiff from cleaning fish, you sleep without dreams. Not because the sea is done with you, but because, for now, it's at peace. And now, as your eyelids grow heavy and the gentle hush of imagined waves rocks you into stillness, let the rest of the world fade. The sky stretches overhead, star-speckled and vast, and the fjord's breath ebbs in and out like a lullaby. That boat, your boat, is moored safely now, creaking just a little against the dock. The nets are dry, the fish are smoked, and the fog, that whispering watcher from the sea, has drifted off to find someone else to confuse. You're warm. The hearth glows softly. A worn woolen blanket wraps around your shoulders as you settle onto your bench, listening to the crackle of firewood and the muffled hum of the village at sleep. The jawbone is gone. The sea has given what it meant to give, and taken back what it claimed. For now, the water is still, but not silent. It's breathing, and that's the way of things. You fished, you fought, you fed your people, and you faced a mystery older than the village itself, all in a single day. And now, with your boots off and the weight of salt water washed from your skin, there's nothing left to do but rest. So let yourself drift. Let your muscles uncoil. Let your thoughts trail behind the boat like empty nets. The fjord is calm. The air is cool. The gods are quiet. And the sea is sleeping.